Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Horn Call Podcast. My name is James Bolden. I'm the publications editor for the IHS and your host. This episode is brought to you by Valery Polak, French Hornist Laureate of All Russia, a book by David Gladen. Gladen, who learned to speak Russian while serving in the U.S. Air Force, took on the translation of Polak's remarkable chronicle as a favor to a relative, well-known hornist James A. Decker, who was part of Polak's musical cohort. Gladen has handled this dynamic assignment with diligence, offering a portrait that can now be shared with a large and doubtless grateful audience. Valery Polak, a French Hornist Laureate of All Russia, is a stirring tribute to one of the Soviet Union's most celebrated brass musicians. Author David Gladen traces the extraordinary life and legacy of Valery Polak, a virtuoso performer, esteemed teacher, and cultural icon. Through a richly written book and historical insight, this biography offers a rare glimpse into the world of Russian classical music, from conservatory halls to grand stages across the globe. A must-read for musicians, historians, and lovers of classical music. Available now from Amazon and David Gladen's website, davidgladenbooks.com. That's davidgladenbooks.com. Houghton Horns offers premium horns for players of all levels, expert advice, and top-quality accessories, all from musicians and educators who get it. Get free shipping and returns on new instruments for customers within the continental U.S., warranties on new and pre-owned instruments, multiple financing options, and even trade-ins. Visit houghtonhorns.com and elevate your performance today. Houghton Horns, first-class brass. Our lovely guest today is Vidhurinda Samaraweera from Sri Lanka. He is the IHS country representative for India and Sri Lanka, and it was a great pleasure to speak with him today. He's written articles for the Horn Call and is a regular contributor to Horn and More, the digital monthly newsletter of the IHS, and he's also a member of the editorial advisory board for the Horn Call. And I knew him a little bit just through his articles and corresponding on things about the Horn Call, but it was really, really enlightening and quite interesting to hear Vidhu's personal story and also about his musical journey, and I think you're going to be interested in it as well. So without further delay, here's my chat with Vidhurinda Samaraweera. I'm really excited for you to be joining me today, Vidhu, and I feel like I know you a little bit already because of your excellent article in the Horn Call talking about your background and the musical life in Sri Lanka. But do you want to give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got to be a horn player and kind of your early musical training?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, James. It's been a pleasure being part of the International Horn Society. I've only been a member for about a year now. Talking about being a musician in the subcontinent, and particularly a horn player, it's a niche. Mm-hmm. And it's a very rare role because predominantly we have embraced an Oriental music culture. Some of these traditions have been passed down to us from the big neighbor just above us, India. However, there is a small crowd, mostly condensed in the capital of Sri Lanka, who engage with Western classical music. Mm-hmm. I just happen to be one of the fortunate ones. I was not initially from the capital itself. I was brought up a little further away from it. However, as I advanced through my studies, I came to high school to Colombo. I'm a Buddhist, by the way. In Sri Lanka, we have a very diverse community. We mainly have Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims, and also we have descendants of certain foreign origins. For example, the Burghers, who are Sri Lankans mixed with the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the British. Therefore, we're a diverse nation who's living in unity. Mm-hmm. So I advanced, or rather, I entered the capital. I came to high school. That's where I was exposed to Western classical music.
Mm.
I had learned a little bit of Oriental music before I joined high school, but in my high school, it is an Anglican missionary school.
Mm-hmm.
It was established by the British. There we had a chamber orchestra.
Okay.
I was invited by one of my friends to come and play, but I knew nothing about music.
Oh, interesting.
But my friend played the recorder.
Okay.
So he said, "Why don't you just come on over? We'll have fun." But the downside of it was all the practices started at 6 a.m.
Oh, wow.
before roll call. So it was from 6 a.m. till about 7:30 a.m. I went the first day. I didn't really like it, to be honest. But then I kind of picked up on it, and we had a fantastic instructor who was really inspirational, who then later on became my horn teacher. He happened to be the principal horn player of the Symphony Orchestra of Sri Lanka, and he was the horn soloist for the already established orchestras at the time. So I find myself really fortunate to have been in that environment. I feel like the chances would have been 1 in 21 million, because that's our total population.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very rare that you find horn teachers out of all kinds of music teachers that you find in Sri Lanka.
Sure.
But I wasn't exposed to the horn at the very outset. I initially started off with the recorder, as I said, and we have a national youth orchestra in Sri Lanka, which is over 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that is in par with the national youth orchestras that you may find in America or in Europe. But we've had a pretty consistent program
Mm-hmm.
In Sri Lanka. And they loaned out instruments to students as long as they were part of the orchestra.
Right.
One fine day, I was called in for a practice, and I was just handed this big instrument. I was about 13 years old. And it was just out of the blue, it was handed over to me. I didn't know what on earth it was. And then the lesson slowly began. I finally sort of got around it. And here I am. What began at that time, I've been able to sort of pick up on certain things, and I took it up a little seriously. Yeah.
And so these were lessons with Mr. Weerakun.
Yes, Mr. Weerakun, Mr. Manilal Weerakun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
mentioned him in your article. Yeah.
Yes. In my view, he's the foremost horn player that Sri Lanka has produced. He has done a lot for the horn playing community, although it may be about 5 or 6 people at best in Sri Lanka. But he's I would say, the all-time guru.
That's excellent. Well, and so what were lessons like with him starting out?
He wasn't too easy to play. I can remember he told me one thing. He said, if you're kind of good at singing,
Mm-hmm.
you might stand a chance playing the horn.
Okay.
I think I spent about an entire week trying to pitch middle C. and it wasn't easy. He didn't particularly give me an easy time. But it took me about a week
Mm-hmm.
to ease into it. But then he had a slightly different approach as opposed to other brass teachers in Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little bit more pragmatic because in Sri Lanka, I may have gotten a few individual lessons with him,
Uh-huh.
but everything that I've learned so far, whatever I've acquired through orchestra rehearsals.
I see. Yeah.
So the schooling system in Sri Lanka is also such that you have school on all weekdays, starting at around 7:30 a.m.,
Uh-huh.
finishing around 1:30 p.m. And then after that starts extracurricular activities, sports. And then the ambitious parents would send us off to tuition for main subjects. So we would have very little time to practice the instrument.
I see. Okay.
But fortunately, we had continuous and ongoing orchestra rehearsals throughout the week.
Okay.
And
these are in the evening time?
Yes, mostly during the evening times.
Okay.
So initially, when I sort of morphed from the student level to intermediate level, I was able to join some of the amateur orchestras that functioned in Colombo.
I see.
So the foremost orchestra at the time being the Symphony Orchestra of Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
There's an opening. I was part of the Junior Symphony Orchestra, where they molded students before they were taken into the Symphony Orchestra. So after I finished 1 year in the Junior Symphony Orchestra, I advanced into the Symphony Orchestra. And there, it kind of took off.
Okay.
I was exposed to more advanced music. And then after about 2-3 years since I joined, I was put in the principal horn position.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was a really daunting experience, but with time, I learned a lot.
Well, that's excellent. So you mentioned that, Western classical music is just one very small part of the musical culture and life in Sri Lanka. Do you want to talk about what other types of music are prevalent, and then maybe also, what opportunities there are for professional musicians in Sri Lanka?
I think Indian classical music takes up about 60% of the industry.
Okay.
In Sri Lanka. So everything else falls into the remaining 40%.
Mm-hmm.
Few of the other genres would be, we have several really good pop bands.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we haven't had many funk settings because we were not really acquainted with horn sections, as in the normal saxophone, trombone, trumpet configuration. But then with time, it sort of blossomed into a fully fledged funk bands. We do not have big band. In terms of jazz, we would have jazz trios, quartets.
Mm-hmm.
Besides all of that, you'll find this extremely, extremely niche category of classical music, from chamber music all the way up to full, complete symphony orchestra.
Right.
Now, so in terms of opportunities, it's mostly, I suppose this is universal. It's not particularly easy for musicians out there.
That is correct.
Yeah. So in the commercial sector, there are a lot of opportunities for all the mainstream instruments, maybe guitar, keyboard, you name it. But for horns, still the market is not so big. We're still getting there. But luckily enough, I was able to collaborate with some of the big names in Sri Lanka. They're trying to take Sri Lankan music to international platforms and onto international stages. So hopefully we will be able to incorporate more horns, not just in the classical scene, but in the commercial sector as well.
Yeah, that's something you mentioned in your article. You're part of a group that's done some work in the popular music realm, and there's video people can watch on YouTube of your group performing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that group?
Absolutely. The team is, of course, called the A-Team Horns Sri Lanka. About 5-6 years ago, a well-known pop band, or rather funk band, existed, which was called the A-Team. It was headed by one of the pioneer drummers of Sri Lanka, Mr. Aruna Siriwardana. He was the leader of that band.
Okay.
And obviously they called themselves probably A for Aruna, maybe. I think I need to pose that question to him. That's the A-Team. That's the origin story of the A-Team. At least in the, I believe it has existed long before that, but the band was on a break for a few years. And it was the revival of the band that I saw when I was young. Okay. But the specialty of that band was that they incorporated a horn section,
Mm-hmm.
a saxophone, a trumpet, and a trombone. I was never part of it. But then the band dissolved after a few years, after functioning for a few years. And then just the horn section wanted to keep playing
Mm-hmm.
because the horn community is so small and everybody knows everybody.
Right.
So all three players were dear friends of mine. So we got to talking, and then we finally decided we're going to go ahead with it. But we're going to also incorporate a French horn.
Uh-huh.
So it'll be a 4-member band. I mean, even abroad, I haven't seen many horn, like pop or funk horn sections with French horns incorporated in them.
There's only a very few. Yeah, there's very, very few.
Yeah. So it was a very special setup. To date, we continue to perform. I think to give a little bit more context, all 4 players are from 4 different walks of life. Due to the socio-economic backdrop of this country, it's very rarely that people would be inclined to taking up music as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
So I myself am not a full-time musician. So my basic education was in chemistry. While studying chemistry in university, I studied law.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few months ago, I passed the bar exam.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. In about a month's time from now, I would be taking oaths as an attorney at law in the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. So I'd be practicing law, hopefully fusing chemistry, while also trying to make it as a horn player.
Uh-huh.
So it's a very complicated life in this island, at least for me. Yeah.
Well, how do you keep all of that balanced? How did I imagine studying at university, chemistry and law sound like pretty rigorous, demanding degrees. How did you find, time to practice and to get the horn on your face?
Had to sacrifice sleep. Those are the main challenges. I had to stay awake. Yeah, maybe on some days it was as bad as maybe 1 hour of sleep before I headed off to university.
Oh my goodness.
but that phase is not entirely over, but the most rigorous parts are over, at least.
Well, that's good to hear. It does get harder as you get older to pull those all-nighters.
I would reckon so. Yeah.
So talking about the orchestras in Sri Lanka, what's the season like? Is it similar to like a Western or European orchestra where you have, you might start in August or September and then go through until May or June and then have, June, July, August off? Or I don't know anything about that. Could you maybe share a little bit about how the orchestra season works in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, of course. There's no structure or form as such. There are mainly 3 orchestras that exist in Sri Lanka. The oldest being the Symphony Orchestra of Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, I was the principal horn there for a few years. They did not necessarily have a seasonal approach.
Mm.
They would, much like a corporate body, they would have an annual plan.
Uh-huh.
So I was never part of the management, but from what I understand, from what I infer, they would plan from, say, January 2025 until December 2025.
Okay, it's like a calendar.
Yeah. There we go. So they would have obviously planned concerts, but there are sporadic chamber concerts also.
I see. Okay.
So another orchestra that exists is the Chamber Music Society of Colombo. It is, of course, a much younger orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, it was established somewhere around 2008. They predominantly perform a lot of chamber music, a lot of Baroque music.
Okay.
They excel at that. They also have a season planned out. I'm not very well acquainted with how they work out their season, but they bring in a lot of guest artists. So they do concerts in much more intimate setups.
I see. Okay.
Going beyond which, of course, do you remember I told you I had this friend who taught me recorder.
Right. Yeah.
When I was
Invited
in
you to the
high school.
chamber orchestra. Yeah.
There we go. Until then, I was studying art.
Okay.
So he's the one who really changed up my life.
Mm-hmm.
So then I sort of totally got out of art, and then I continued to pursue music. So this dude and I, he ventured out to playing oboe.
Okay.
And then later on, he took up conducting very seriously. His name is Sri Lanka. He so happens to be the chief conductor of the Gustav Mahler Orchestra of Colombo, which him and I established back in 2018. We sort of gave up performing in other orchestras. Mm-hmm. We wanted to start something independent with the hopes and with the purpose of, at some point, hopefully before our demise, to establish a professional orchestra in Sri Lanka.
Uh-huh.
We currently do not have a single professional orchestra. All are amateur orchestras. Some orchestras work towards creating a professional setup. Some orchestras, they are more focused on maintaining the status quo.
I see. Okay. Now, how are orchestras funded? Is there, support? Can one get like grants from the government or other entities to, even pay for the conductor or to rent the venue to have a concert? How does all that work?
James, I honestly feel like you just opened a can of worms.
Okay.
But I'm going to let you in on. I'm going to let you in on all of the information.
Okay, well, share whatever you like, yeah. And if you decide you want to cut some of this out, we certainly can. But
I'd none at all. Yeah. None at all. But I think this is something that should be out there, because I think it's going to give a lot of perspective to all these lovely musicians who are out there, who are some of them well established, some of them who are already on platforms to perform, mm-hmm. Who perform in lovely venues, traveling, touring the world. Mm-hmm. As opposed to all of that, it's not very, things are not so bright. At least it's not too comfortable in Sri Lanka. For example, the government does not fund any of the orchestras unless it's for a particular project. Mm-hmm. Ergo, we do not have a state orchestra. All are private orchestra. Mm-hmm. Even though the name would suggest Symphony Orchestra of Sri Lanka, it's not a national body. It's privately owned. Mm-hmm. In terms of the Symphony Orchestra and the Chamber Music Society, a lot of the funding comes through, they have trust foundations. Okay. So through their foundations, some of them get, some of the time it may be grants. Sometimes it's the money that's raised through their campaigns.
I see.
We're talking about the Gustav Mahler Orchestra. We procure sponsors maybe for a particular season. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, a seasonal approach.
Right.
But we have done certain projects which involve the government, where the government funded a portion of the expenditure. It would be like a public-private enterprise.
Sure, yeah. Those are increasingly popular in a lot of places, yes.
Yes. So in terms of venues, there's not a single venue in Sri Lanka which is acoustic-friendly to put 80 to 100 musicians at the same time on stage. Mm-hmm. I believe the best venue in Sri Lanka is a theatre in Colombo called the Lionel Wendt Theatre. But it can only accommodate about maybe a maximum of 70 or 75 musicians at once on stage. Okay. So playing a full Mahler symphony might feel like it might be a conductor's nightmare or dilemma.
I remember seeing a picture in your article of a section. Was that after a Mahler symphony? I can't remember what the context of the picture was.
Well, as you may have already inferred, Mala is rarely being performed in this part of the world. Let alone nobody knows about Mala in this part of the world. We're just trying to popularize it through the Gustav Mahler Society of Colombo. But fortunately, we were able to perform Mahler's Fourth Symphony for the first time in South Asia. Um, I think the pictures that you're referring to might be of that concert.
Okay, yeah, it was a picture of the horn section, and they were standing up or something.
Oh, yes. Oh no, actually, that was after a performance of the New World Symphony.
Oh, excellent.
We did it old school style. So we have a gigantic horn section, like
I love it. Yeah, double parts. Yeah,
double parts. Yeah,
that's great. Well, I think the situation of orchestras is challenging in a lot of places to varying degrees, So I'm sending you all my good thoughts and
thanks so much.
Wishes for that. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
You're a testament to the perseverance of these things, and despite times being hard and funding and all that sort of stuff, people continue to do it, and they still try to find and create opportunities to make music happen. So that, I think that, if nothing else, is inspiring.
For us, that's the only way out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The attitude is such that if we don't do it, nobody else would.
Yes.
So we would have to establish that precedent. So we've always operated on that basis.
Well, I think we could all learn a thing or two from that. So,
if I may, I want to just add one more thing to that previous conversation. We do not have, other than maybe chamber orchestras, we do not have permanent rehearsal venues. So we don't have conservatories in Sri Lanka. Mm-hmm. So even though we have Western music departments, the main university or state-funded university in Sri Lanka, someone to learn music, would be the University of Visual and Performing Arts. In my view, compared to international standards, there's a long way to go for those departments. Skill-wise, knowledge-wise, there's a big lacuna which needs to be filled. It's kind of a shame that the government or the state is not much concerned about it. We have graduates who come into the industry. Sometimes they would know how to identify a chord. So it could be that bad. But if you take it on the spectrum, obviously there'll be few good ones. But then if you take it holistically, I don't think it's quite there yet. So in terms of education and development of the industry, we're so far behind. In that context, when thinking about establishing a professional orchestra or working towards it, it feels almost impossible. But we're slowly working towards it, taking it chunk by chunk.
That's the only way to do it, and I'm glad to hear that. Well, you mentioned early on the International Horn Society. Tell me how you got involved writing for the electronic newsletter Horn and More, and how you got in touch with Mike Harcrow, and because you write things pretty regularly for this newsletter. So if people aren't aware of that, check out Vidhu's contributions to Horn and More.
Funny story. I would say I'm old school. I'm quite active on Facebook. I'm not very Instagram savvy.
Me either.
So one day I see a notification on Messenger. A gentleman called Mike Harcrow has messaged me. And to see, I have a very formal invitation to write for this newsletter called Horn and More of the International Horn Society. I was thrilled. I've known the International Horn Society for the longest time. I've never had the intention, or I've never even envisioned that I would join the International Horn Society at some point. So I was extremely thrilled, and I promptly replied saying, I'm on board. And I wrote this one piece several months ago, last year, about horn playing in Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
And it really took off from there. So I made it a duty to write each month. Sometimes I know Mike has been very accommodating. Sometimes my pieces have been very lengthy, so he has tried to communicate that to me very diplomatically. Just try to maybe you can sort of publish it in parts, or maybe you can. I think that's how it kind of ended up in the horn call as well.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mike's very good at that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how we got to know each other. And I mean, that's the very reason, or rather the cause of this whole podcast, I believe.
Yeah, well, and I should also add that you're a member of our editorial advisory board for the Horn Call, so we're very pleased to have you helping us out in that capacity as well.
Been a pleasure.
Well, yeah, likewise. So, I guess stepping back a little bit, you've shared some things already, but are there other things that you would like the rest of the world to know about Sri Lanka, and perhaps getting a little more focused about being a horn player there? Anything else that you haven't shared already?
I'm wondering where to start. But let me go back in history. If you've already read the article, you would by now know that Sri Lanka has had a very illustrious history. We have been a proud nation. We have a written history of over 2,500 years. Maybe I took you back too many years. Maybe I took you too far back. But I think this context is very important to what I'm going to say. Because Sri Lanka is virtually not unknown. It's only known by a few people. Something that brings a lot of revenue to date to this country is its tourism industry. Besides its exported goods such as tea, rubber, coconut. We've had influences from different nations. We've had the influences of India. We've had influences of China. We've had influences of Rome. There remain evidence that kings and queens back then and ministers back then has had exchanges with the Roman emperor.
Oh, interesting.
So the history goes as far as that. And finally, we ended up being a colony of the Great Britain, where a lot of the Western musical traditions have seeped into Sri Lankan musical landscape. I think I wrote a 3-part piece for Horn and More called Sri Lankan Papara music. That is, I would find it as a distinct genre, where that is like the only place where you would normally find brass players.
Okay.
And of course, military bands. With the advent of the British military or the Imperial Army in Sri Lanka, in Ceylon, as how it was called by the British at the time, until 1972. We were heavily influenced like that. We gained independence in 1948. We became an independent republic in 1972. In 1972, the British went for good. A small portion of their culture remained. Whatever classical music and all other types of Western traditions that we have today are a result of that. All of what we have now have stemmed from that. Over the years, horn playing has not been a focal point in the progression of the music industry of Sri Lanka. Mr. Manilal Veerapawan was one of the only Sri Lankans who took it upon himself to learn the instruments by hook or by crook. There were no teachers in Sri Lanka. He was mostly a self-taught player. The all-time guru of Sri Lanka is a self-taught player. I do not know if you would want to believe that, but that's the truth. and he's a fantastic performer. He was a great singer. He was also educated in the same school as I was.
Okay.
So we have a pretty rich choral tradition in my school.
Okay.
I think it will not do any harm if I mention the name of it. St. Thomas's College, which is located in Mount Lavinia, in the suburbs. He was a great singer.
Okay.
Maybe that's how he perceived horn players as, performers or musicians who are slightly capable of singing a note accurately.
Right. Well, yeah, you mentioned that when you started studying with him, he told you if you could sing decently, you might make a good horn player.
Yes. And from there on, he advanced into being the principal horn player of the symphony orchestra at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, right up until now, majority of the horn section is usually consisting of military band players or retired military personnel who are part of either the Army, Air Force, or naval bands.
Right.
Those bandsmen have also not had formal training.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them have not been educated in a Western music culture.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them who have come into horn playing have studied Oriental music before. They may have started their music reading when they joined the marching band or the military band.
Right.
So from there on, these again, maybe this is universal. Maybe the dynamics are changing. Most of the horn players are men. You rarely find ladies taking up the instrument, at least in Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
Be that as it may, these horn players, with time, they evolved.
Right.
Being part of a military band, the life is such that it's like a 8 to 5 job.
I see.
You're sort of it's not where you have willfully chosen it. Sometimes the instrument is just forced on you, and you take it upon you to, if I don't do this, you can't. You lose your bread and butter.
Right. Right.
So they would be forced into it. But few key players who were really interested in the intricacies of horn playing took it seriously. They would go into orchestras. They would continue to play. And I must tell you, orchestras in Sri Lanka do not pay that well as opposed to the commercial industry.
I see.
So, and then horn section started slowly growing from 1 horn player to 2 horn players to 3 and to 4.
Mm-hmm.
There have been occasions we used 5 to 6 horn players on stage. I think in my tenure as principal horn, I think the pinnacle I've reached is having 8 horn players on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Without formal training, without any background, without the slightest knowledge of musical interpretation, so to speak, we've had to evolve.
Right.
We've had to learn stuff on the go.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things about this modern age, though, that is perhaps a brighter spot, and that is there is the opportunity to see videos and to do perhaps even online lessons and things like that. And I think I'm hoping that that's something that the International Horn Society is, if not already known for, can be known for, is being a resource for people everywhere that want to learn more about the instrument.
Absolutely. So recently we concluded several master classes and a recital which was conducted by Professor Peter Arnold, who visited Sri Lanka. So as the Gustav Mahler Society, we were able to facilitate the master classes and the recital. I mean, I learned things which I had never learned before. I myself, having played as a principal horn in several orchestras for quite a few years, learned great many new things. Some of them being extremely fundamental to the point, sometimes breathing techniques, intricacies in the embouchure, or even things like posture.
Right, yeah.
It was a complete overhaul for us. And we couldn't stop thinking to ourselves, man, if being with a professor for just 3 days would change us this much. Imagine living midst people who have this much of knowledge, who are regularly performing, who are regularly teaching, who are well accustomed to all these practices and who know these little trade secrets. What sort of magic we can create here in Sri Lanka as well. So as you said, James, I think we would extremely, or rather very, very warmly welcome anybody who wishes to disseminate knowledge to us. We are so open to learning.
And that's wonderful to hear. And Vidhu, thank you so much for giving up some of your evening to chat with me. I thought maybe to kind of wrap up our conversation, we could talk a little bit about what the IHS has meant to you as an organization, and maybe what you might share with other horn players out there to encourage them to join the IHS and to support this organization.
Absolutely. IHS, to me, has been a very, very inspirational organization. You were quite right, James, when you said the tides have changed. The facilities that are available today are much more advanced compared to what our predecessors have had. The technology has been amazing. I can tell you this much. I have watched many great horn players perform on YouTube, one of whom has been Sarah Willis of the Berlin Philharmonic. It was a surreal moment for me when I was able to communicate with her after I joined the International Horn Society. She was one of the heroes of mine growing up, being a young horn player. Low horn playing is so fantastic. I'm always taken up by it. And it was so surreal for me. I'm just this simple Simon from a country just above the equator, just below India, which is rarely visited, rarely graced by horn players. I've learned that Sir Simon Rattle, sometimes when he travels to Maldives, would have his would make a stop in Sri Lanka, but not to stay. Yeah. So we get the whiff of air, and that's it. Nobody has come here to stay a few days, and because it's not known. People would generally think that, we're not perceived as a country which could have or could potentially have a Western classical scene. The International Horn Society has been a great bridge in connecting Sri Lanka with the rest of the world. We were virtually unheard of. I believe I might be the first representative for India and Sri Lanka in the IHS. Am I correct? Has there ever been somebody?
I would have to check, previous horn calls or something, but yeah, I would assume it's fairly recent. Yeah. I
see. Because I have not known, I have not seen. I've been following the IHS for the longest time.
Then you're probably right. Yeah, you're that's probably accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, because even in India, I have not heard of any horn players for that matter. Most of the horn players who perform I think India has one symphony orchestra, a professional symphony orchestra, which is the Symphony Orchestra of India. All of the horn players are brought from abroad.
I see.
They're not homegrown players. It has been a surreal experience. I think this would be the perfect opportunity for Sri Lanka and for the rest of the world for cultural exchange.
Yes, yeah.
We obviously appreciate knowledge, and in return, we will give out a piece of Sri Lanka. We have amazing food here. We have lovely beaches. We have so many cultural heritage sites to visit. So in return, we would warmly offer all of what we have.
Well, that's fantastic. Let's hope that happens soon. And thanks again for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, James.
The Horn Call Podcast is the official podcast of the International Horn Society. The views, information, or opinions expressed during this series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the International Horn Society. Copyright International Horn Society. Music by Brian K.M.